The European model spit out a number last night that made our whole team stop dead in our tracks, and it has absolutely nothing to do with snow. 6 inches, half a foot of rain, dumped on the exact same corridor. In less than 10 days, and the Weather Prediction Center has already slapped this with a high-risk flooding label, which they only do when every single alarm bell is ringing at the same time. But here's the part nobody's talking about yet at the very same moment that high-risk flooding designation is going up for tens of millions of Americans. Another part of this country just woke up under a blizzard warning, and buried underneath all of that, the polar vortex is quietly doing something that could flip the entire second half of March completely upside down. We're going to walk through all of it city by city, threat by threat, week by week, and we're going to do it straight. Because honestly, a lot of what's been floating around this week about historic blizzards and massive snowstorms hitting the Northeast is flat out not what the models are actually showing. And y'all deserve the real picture. So, stay with us here. Because the genuine threats in this pattern are serious enough without adding hype on top of them, and the story that's actually unfolding right now is complicated in ways that matter for a whole lot of people across this country today. Let's start with the engine driving all of this, because once you understand what's happening with the jet stream right now, everything else clicks into place, and the short version is this. The jet stream is in the middle of a major gear shift, and we're all living in the consequences of that shift right now. All winter long. The polar jet has been running the show. That's the northern jet stream that funnels cold Arctic air down from Canada and carries those Alberta clipper systems that gave the upper Midwest such a rough February, but starting this week, the subtropical jet is muscling its way in and taking over. And that swap changes everything about where our storms go and how much moisture they carry. Here's the plainest way I can say it. The polar jet brings cold and dry air from Canada. The subtropical jet taps directly into the Gulf of Mexico and hauls warm, juicy, loaded with moisture air straight northward and right now. That Gulf moisture is about to get pumped into the central U.S. over and over again, like somebody left a fire hose running and walked away. And here's the part that makes this more than just a rainy week. Think of the central U.S. right now like a sponge that's already been soaked once this week. And the models are showing it's about to get hit again Tuesday, again Thursday, again Friday, possibly into the weekend, and once a sponge is fully saturated. Every single drop that comes after goes straight to the floor, and the floor right now is the Ohio Valley, the Mid-South, and every river system draining into the lower Mississippi. That right there, that repeated punch to the same corridor, is precisely why the Weather Prediction Center escalated all the way to high risk on flooding. Not slight, not moderate. High, and that zone covers a stretch from northeastern Texas through Ohio that's home to more than 30 million people who need to be paying attention right now. On top of all that flooding business, we've also got a sudden stratospheric warming event, SSW for short, that is actively messing with the polar vortex right now. Way up in the stratosphere, about 30 miles above the surface, where most of us never think about the weather, but what happens up there eventually works its way down here, usually 2 to 6 weeks later. The last time the polar vortex got knocked around like this earlier this winter, it sent a dome of Arctic air crashing down across 25 states within a few weeks, and right now the overnight model runs are starting to hint at signs of that happening again. Somewhere around March 10th to 15th, but we'll get to that in a bit. Because first we need to talk about what's actually on your doorstep today. Right now, this morning, the upper Midwest is getting pounded by a clipper system already in full swing, and if you're sitting in Minneapolis or Milwaukee wondering whether you should have shoveled first and then made your coffee, the answer is yes. You absolutely should have shoveled first. Minneapolis is sitting at just 20 degrees today. That's a high of 20, low of 10. With 0.6 inches of snow coming down and wind chill, making it feel well below zero. And I want to be real with you about what 20 degrees with blowing snow actually means for your Sunday. It means stay home if you don't have to be out there. Plain and simple. No sugarcoating it. St. Paul is right there with Minneapolis at 22 degrees. Milwaukee sitting at 25 with half an inch of snow. Madison at 25 degrees. And here's what I want you to understand about this clipper. It's not a monster snowmaker. We're only looking at 1 to 3 inches for most of the upper Midwest, but at 20 degrees with gusty winds. Even 1 inch of fresh snow on top of existing ice is enough to turn a perfectly normal road into a genuine hazard. As that clipper pushes east into Michigan and Ontario tonight, the story shifts from pure snow to something a little sneakier, and Chicago is a good example of exactly why you're at 28 degrees today, with the possibility of freezing rain mixed in and up to half an inch of ice accumulation. And that specific combo of sitting right at freezing with ice potential is actually one of the nastiest road scenarios you can possibly have. Here's why 28 degrees with freezing rain is sometimes worse than 15 degrees with snow you can treat and plow, but a thin glaze of ice on a road that looks perfectly normal and dry to the naked eye is what sends cars into guardrails at 35 miles per hour. So, Chicago. Check those road conditions before you head anywhere Monday morning, because what looks clear may not be. Across the Great Lakes, Detroit is at 28 degrees with freezing rain impact and icy road conditions. Toledo at 30 degrees also watching for that ice glaze. Cleveland at 30 degrees with ice forming on bridges, and the thing about this whole corridor that makes it extra tricky is that the temperature is right at that maddening borderline where conditions can flip from wet to icy and back again multiple times in the same hour, depending on whether you're on a bridge, under tree cover, or out in the open. Columbus is at 32 degrees with cold rain and freezing potential. Indianapolis at 30 degrees with light snow. Fort Wayne also at 30 with snow, and Pittsburgh is sitting dead on 32 degrees, which is that everything looks fine until it suddenly isn't. Temperature that road crews genuinely dread more than any other reading on the thermometer, because black ice can form in minutes when you're right at freezing. As you move south through Ohio and Kentucky, the picture softens a bit. Cincinnati at 35 degrees with freezing rain. Louisville at 45 degrees with cold rain. Lexington at 45 degrees, and that temperature gradient from 28 in Detroit to 45 in Louisville tells you exactly where that cold front is sitting right now, draped across the Ohio Valley like a dividing line between winter and something almost resembling March. Now, speaking of Missouri, there's something developing in the Ozarks region right now that a lot of folks in the Kansas City area are going to wake up to tomorrow morning. And it is not going to be a welcome surprise. A new system is pushing north out of the Ozarks today, bringing a wintry mix of snow, sleet, rain, and freezing drizzle that could make Monday morning in Kansas City and St. Joseph genuinely ugly. St. Louis is at 40 degrees with freezing rain and 0.4 inches of ice possible. Kansas City at 45 degrees, but with that Ozark system pushing up tonight, adding freezing rain to the mix. And if you're in St. Joseph or anywhere north of Kansas City, your Monday morning commute deserves a weather check tonight before you go to sleep. Not a surprise check when you're already late. Des Moines is at 35 degrees with light snow. Buffalo at 28 degrees with lake effect snow and those wind gusts that only people who've actually experienced a Great Lakes setup truly understand. And then there's Omaha, Nebraska, which is in this wild situation today where it's 40 degrees, has light snow possible, and is under a red flag fire weather warning simultaneously. Only in Nebraska can you have those two things happening at the exact same moment. Here's a question for everyone in the upper Midwest and Great Lakes dealing with snow and ice today. Drop your city in the comments right now and tell us what it looks like outside your window. And here's why that actually matters to you. Not just to us if we get enough real-time reports from your region in the next hour or so. We'll do a dedicated city-level breakdown in tomorrow's video. And your comment could literally be what determines what we cover. All right, let's head east to the I-95 corridor, because the Northeast has its own distinct weather story today that's different from what's happening in the Midwest. And the key thing to understand is that today isn't the day Northeast folks really need to worry. But Monday night into Tuesday is a different story entirely. New York City is right at 32 degrees today with a little cold rain and gusty winds, borderline freezing, but not the main event. Philadelphia at 35 degrees with cold rain. Washington, D.C. at 38 degrees. Baltimore at 35 degrees, and the whole I-95 corridor is cold and messy today. But where it gets interesting is what the models are showing for Monday evening into Tuesday. The models are showing a 60 to 70% chance of minor freezing rain impacts for the Monday night through Tuesday window from Northern Virginia through Maryland and into Pennsylvania. And I know that minor impacts phrase sounds like nothing worth worrying about. But let me get specific about what minor impacts actually looks like at 6:30 on a Tuesday morning when 30 million people are trying to get out the door. It means your driveway looks wet but is actually a skating rink. It means every bridge and overpass on your commute is glazed over with a thin sheet of ice that's completely invisible. It means school delays and fender benders stacking up on I-95 before 7 a.m. None of that is a life or death situation by itself. But it's the kind of thing that turns a Tuesday into a complete nightmare for a whole lot of people who weren't heads up about it. Boston is at 30 degrees today with 0.4 inches of snow and wind chills making it feel considerably colder, and Tuesday brings another round for New England, with 2 to 3 inches of snow possible before that rain system washes it away. Not a blockbuster storm, but enough to matter for your commute if you're not ready for it. Newark and Jersey City at 32 degrees, Richmond at 45 with cold rain, Virginia Beach, Norfolk and Chesapeake all at 45 degrees, and the honest bottom line for the whole Northeast. Right now, it's not a major snowstorm pattern. The models are very clear on that. It's a wintry mix event for Monday night into Tuesday. And anyone who's been telling you to expect 6 to 12 inches of snow this week is not reading the same data the National Weather Service is reading. Charlotte and Raleigh-Durham at 55 degrees with plain old rain, no wintry threat. No severe weather risk Greensboro and Winston-Salem also at 55 degrees, and as you move south through the Carolinas. The temperature story gets a whole lot more benign. That 55-degree line is basically your natural border between watch for ice and just grab your umbrella. And speaking of that dividing line, here's where the pattern really starts to get wild, because just a couple hundred miles south of Charlotte, where it's 55 and rainy, Atlanta is sitting at 60 degrees with 0.8 inches of heavy rain and an active storm threat. And then you go another few hundred miles south of Atlanta, and the threat level jumps to a completely different level. Birmingham and Huntsville. Alabama both at 60 degrees with 0.7 to 0.8 inches of rain and active thunderstorms rolling through today. Nashville at 55 degrees with 0.9 inches of heavy rain, and Memphis. Tennessee at 60 degrees with a full inch of rain and active storm threat. And I want you to sit with that Memphis number for just a second, because 1 inch of rain in a single day in a city that's already been getting repeated soakings is exactly how you end up with a flash flood watch going out at midnight. New Orleans at 70 degrees with a full inch of rain. Baton Rouge at 70 degrees with a full inch, and when you start stacking these numbers up with repeated systems hitting the same areas day after day over the next week and a half. The river gauge situation along the lower Mississippi starts moving into genuinely concerning territory that the Army Corps of Engineers is already watching very closely. Now, right here, I need to pump the brakes for a second, because I think a lot of folks are going to skim past the flooding story to focus on the ice and snow headlines, and honestly, that would be a mistake, because flooding is the #1 threat in this pattern by a wide margin, and it deserves your full attention. The Weather Prediction Center only issues 3 flood risk levels: slight, moderate, and high, and they only go all the way to high when the atmospheric models, the soil moisture data, the river levels, and the rainfall rate projections are all pointing in the exact same ugly direction at the same time right now. Every single one of those indicators is lined up. That high-risk flooding zone covers northeastern Texas, northern Louisiana, Arkansas, northern Mississippi, southeastern Missouri, western Tennessee, western Kentucky, central Indiana, central Illinois, and through Ohio. And if you live anywhere in that corridor and your property has ever had water issues, a creek nearby, a storm drain that backs up, or a basement that collects water this week is your wake-up call. The flash flood scenario that keeps forecasters up at night isn't the dramatic one you see on the evening news with cars floating down Main Street. It's the quiet one, where it's been raining steadily all day. You go to bed thinking it was fine because your street looked dry, and then at 3 a.m., your phone goes off with a flash flood emergency alert, and you've got maybe 10 minutes to figure out what to do. Houston is at 72 degrees today with a full inch of heavy rain and an actual tornado risk. Dallas at 68 degrees with 0.8 inches of severe storm activity. Fort Worth and Arlington at 68 degrees with damaging wind gusts. And I want to be straight with Houston specifically. You are already recording a full inch of rain today before the main flooding event even gets rolling. And that is a situation that demands your respect. Austin at 70 degrees with 0.7 inches and a tornado watch in effect. San Antonio at 70 with active storm threat. Plano, Garland, and Arlington across the DFW suburbs all at 68 degrees with 0.6 inches of rain and severe weather risk. And if you're in any of those DFW area cities and you haven't actually checked your specific county's National Weather Service page today, go do that right now. Not after this video. Oklahoma City at 60 degrees with 0.7 inches of active storms. Tulsa at 62 degrees with 0.7 inches. Corpus Christi at 72 degrees with 0.5 inches and active storm activity. The whole Southern Plains corridor is basically a line of flashing warning lights stretching from South Texas up through Oklahoma today. And it only gets more complicated as we head into the week. Now, right here is where the Texas story takes a turn that genuinely messes with your head because you drive 400 miles west across the same state. And suddenly you've got El Paso at 70 degrees and sunny under a red flag fire weather warning. And Laredo at 75 degrees, also under fire weather concerns, flooding and tornadoes on the east side of Texas. Fire weather warnings on the west side. Same state. Same Sunday morning. I've been doing this a long time, and it still gets me. Lubbock at 65 degrees with fire weather concerns. Omaha at 40 degrees with a red flag warning and light snow possible at the same time. Lincoln. Nebraska also under fire weather risk. And here's the deal with this fire weather window. It is closing fast. Because the moment the Gulf moisture pushes in starting Tuesday, humidity shoots up and the fire risk evaporates, but between now and Monday evening,